The room was silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. A crowd of people stood around a polished wooden chessboard, their eyes wide with shock. At one end sat Lila, a plain woman with a worn gray dress and a shy smile. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for a pawn, her fingers brushing the smooth piece. Across from her sat Marcus, the town's chess champion, his lips curled into a smug grin. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, certain he'd crush her in minutes. The crowd whispered and giggled, waiting for Lila to make a fool of herself. She was just a baker, after all, a simple woman who kneaded dough and sold bread. What did she know about chess? Lila's pawn slid forward 2 spaces, landing on e4 with a soft click. The crowd gasped. Marcus's grin froze. His eyes darted to the board, then back to Lila. Something was wrong. That move, it wasn't random. It was bold, precise, like the opening of a master. The room buzzed with confusion. Marcus leaned forward, his confidence cracking like thin ice. Lila's shy smile didn't waver, but her eyes sparkled with something dangerous, something no one expected. How could a baker make a move like that? Why did Marcus, the unbeatable champion, look so shaken? And what secret was Lila hiding behind her quiet face? The story began 3 days earlier in the small town of Willowbrook, where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were hard to keep. Lila lived in a tiny house at the edge of town, her days filled with the warm smell of fresh bread and the chatter of customers at her bakery. She was kind but quiet, always listening more than speaking. Her hands were strong from years of kneading dough, and her eyes held a gentle warmth that made people trust her. But to most, she was just Lilath, simple baker who never caused trouble. Willowbrook loved its traditions, and one of them was the annual chess tournament held in the town square. It was a big deal, with banners strung across the streets and a shiny silver trophy for the winner. For 5 years running, Marcus had won it all. He was tall, loud, and proud, with a sharp mind for chess and an even sharper tongue. He loved the spotlight, strutting through town with his trophy, boasting about his victories. "No one in Willowbrook can touch me," he'd say, flashing his perfect teeth. Most people admired him, but some rolled their eyes at his arrogance. Lila never went to the tournament. She'd be in her bakery, serving warm rolls to the crowds who came to watch. This year, though, things were different. It started with a small moment, one that seemed unimportant at the time. Lila was sweeping her shop when Marcus and his friends strolled in, laughing loudly. They were talking about the tournament, their voices carrying over the jingle of the shop's bell. "Hey, Lila," Marcus called, leaning on her counter. "You ever think about playing chess? Or is moving pawns too hard for a baker?" His friends snickered, nudging each other. Lila looked up from her broom, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "I've played a little," she said softly, her voice steady. Marcus laughed, loud and mocking. "A little? Oh, come on. You should join the tournament. It'd be fun to see you try." His friends burst out laughing, and one of them, a wiry boy named Tom, mimicked moving a chess piece with clumsy hands, pretending to be Lila. The customers in the shop went quiet, some frowning, others hiding smiles. Lila didn't flinch. She leaned her broom against the wall and wiped her hands on her apron. "Maybe I will," she said, her voice still soft but with a strange edge to it. Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised but amused. "Really? You're serious?" He smirked, looking her up and down like she was a joke. "All right, Lila. I'll make you a deal. If you join the tournament, I'll play you in an exhibition match before it starts. Just you and me, in front of everyone. Let's see what a baker can do." The crowd in the shop murmured, some excited, others nervous for Lila. Marcus's challenges were never kind. He loved embarrassing his opponents. Lila tilted her head, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, something flickered in her gaze, something that made Marcus's smirk waver just for a second. Okay, she said simply. I'll play you. The shop erupted in whispers. Marcus laughed again, but it sounded forced. This'll be fun, he said, turning to leave with his friends. As they walked out, Tom called back, Don't cry when you lose, Lila. The door slammed shut, and the shop fell silent. Lila went back to sweeping, her face unreadable. But old Mrs. Carter, who'd been buying bread from Lila for years, watched her closely. You sure about this, dear? She asked, her voice low. Marcus doesn't play fair. He'll try to make you look foolish. Lila smiled, small and quiet. I know, she said, but I'm not afraid. Mrs. Carter frowned, unsure what to make of Lila's calm. There was something about the way she said it, something that didn't match the shy baker everyone thought they knew. But no one asked more questions, and the moment passed. The next 2 days were a whirlwind in Willowbrook. Word of Lila's challenge spread like wildfire. By the morning of the exhibition match, the town square was packed. People stood shoulder to shoulder, some holding mugs of cider, others whispering bets. 10 minutes, one man said. That's how long it'll take Marcus to win. Another laughed. 5 if she's lucky. Children ran through the crowd, excited by the buzz, while the adults craned their necks to see the chessboard set up on a small stage. Lila arrived alone, carrying nothing but a plain shawl over her gray dress. The crowd parted as she walked, some cheering, others staring like she was walking to her doom. Marcus was already on stage, pacing like a lion, his chessboard gleaming under the morning sun. He wore a crisp white shirt, his hair slicked back, looking every bit the champion. When he saw Lila, he clapped his hands and grinned. There she is, the baker who thinks she can play chess. The crowd laughed, though some shifted uncomfortably. Lila stepped onto the stage, her movements slow and deliberate. She sat down across from Marcus, folding her hands in her lap. The crowd waited, expecting her to look nervous, but she didn't. Her face was calm, her eyes focused on the board. Marcus sat too, still grinning, and leaned forward. You ready to lose, Lila? He asked loud enough for everyone to hear. She didn't answer. She just looked at him, her eyes steady, and something in her gaze made his grin falter again, just for a moment. The referee, old Mr. Jenkins, stepped forward. This is an exhibition match, he announced. Marcus, our champion, versus Lila, our challenger. He hesitated, unsure how to describe her. The crowd chuckled. First move goes to Lila. Begin. The square went quiet. Every eye was on Lila's hand as it hovered over the board. Marcus leaned back, arms crossed, his face saying he'd already won. The crowd held its breath, waiting for her to fumble, to make a silly mistake they could laugh about later. Then Lila moved her pawn to e4. The click of the piece echoed in the silence. Marcus's face changed. His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightened. The crowd didn't understand at first, but the serious players among the mold men who'd studied chess for years leaned forward, their brows furrowed. That move was no accident. It was the king's pawn opening, one of the strongest starts in chess. A beginner wouldn't know it, a beginner wouldn't dare. Marcus stared at the board, then at Lila. Her shy smile was still there, but now it looked different, like a mask hiding something deeper. He swallowed, his confidence slipping. Your move, Lila said softly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The crowd erupted in whispers. Did you see that? She knows what she's doing. No way, it's luck. Marcus's friends, standing near the stage, looked uneasy. Tom whispered to another friend, What's going on? She's not supposed to be good. Marcus forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow. He moved his pawn to a 5, a standard response, but his hand shook slightly. The crowd watched, breathless, as Lila's hand hovered over the board again. What would she do next? Was her first move a fluke, or was something bigger happening? And why did Marcus, the unbeatable champion, look so nervous? Lila's next move was coming, and the square buzzed with anticipation. The simple baker, the woman everyone underestimated, had just turned the game upside down with one move. But what no one knew, not Marcus, not the crowd, not even old Mrs. Carter, watching from the back, was that Lila had a secret from years ago, buried so deep that Willowbrook had forgotten it, and that secret was about to change everything. The crowd in Willowbrook's town square held its breath as Lila's hand hovered over the chessboard. Her first move pawn to e4 had stunned everyone, including Marcus, the smug chess champion sitting across from her. His confident grin had faded, replaced by a tight-lipped stare as he waited for her next move. The morning sun glinted off the polished wooden pieces, and the air felt thick with tension. Lila's shy smile didn't waver, but her eyes burned with focus. She reached for her knight, sliding it to f3 with another soft click. The crowd gasped again. Another strong move, precise and deliberate. Marcus's face paled. "What's she doing?" a woman in the crowd whispered. "That's no beginner's move." Old Mr. Jenkins, the referee, adjusted his glasses, squinting at the board like he couldn't believe his eyes. Marcus's friends, standing near the stage, shifted uncomfortably. Tom, the wiry boy who'd mocked Lila days ago, muttered, "She's just lucky. She can't keep this up." But his voice trembled, unsure. Marcus leaned forward, his hands gripping the table's edge. He moved his knight to c6, a safe response, but his eyes kept darting to Lila. She wasn't supposed to be this good. She was just a baker, wasn't she? The crowd buzzed, some cheering for Lila, others whispering doubts. "She'll mess up soon," one man said. "Marcus always wins." But Lila's calm face didn't match their expectations. She looked like she belonged at that board, like she'd been waiting for this moment all along. As Lila studied the board for her next move, the story of how she got here began to unfold, pulling the crowd and us back to the days before the match, when whispers of her challenge first stirred Willowbrook. 2 days before the exhibition match, the town was alive with gossip. Lila's agreement to play Marcus had spread faster than the smell of her fresh-baked bread. In the bakery, customers lingered longer than usual, pretending to browse loaves while stealing glances at her. "You really going to play Marcus?" a farmer asked, scratching his beard. Lila nodded, kneading dough with steady hands. "I said I would," she replied, her voice soft but firm. At the tavern that evening, Marcus and his friends held court, laughing over mugs of ale. "She's got no chance," Marcus said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "I'll have her checkmated in 10 moves, maybe 5. His friends roared with laughter, but not everyone joined in. At a corner table, old Mr. Harrell, a retired school teacher with a love for chess, sipped his drink quietly. He'd known Lila's family years ago, before she was born, and something about her challenge nagged at him. He couldn't place it, but there was a memory fuzzy, half forgotten that made him wonder. The next morning, Lila's bakery was busier than ever. People came not just for bread, but for answers. "Where'd you learn chess, Lila?" a woman asked, clutching a loaf. Lila smiled, wiping flour from her hands. "Here and there," she said, her tone light but vague. The woman frowned, unsatisfied, but Lila turned to help another customer, dodging more questions. The townsfolk left with their bread and their curiosity, whispering among themselves. "She's hiding something," they said. "No way a baker plays like that." That afternoon, Marcus and his friends decided to up the stakes. They marched into the bakery, their boots loud on the wooden floor. Lila was behind the counter, arranging rolls in a basket. Marcus leaned forward, his voice dripping with mockery. "You sure you don't want to back out, Lila? I'd hate to embarrass you in front of the whole town." His friend snickered, but Lila didn't flinch. She met his gaze, her eyes steady. I'm sure, she said. But are you? The room went quiet. Marcus blinked, caught off guard. His friend stopped laughing, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus forced a chuckle. Big talk for a baker. We'll see who's laughing tomorrow. He turned to leave, but as he did, he glanced back at Lila. Her calm face unnerved him, like she knew something he didn't. That night, Willowbrook couldn't stop talking about the match. At the town square, workers set up the stage, hanging banners and polishing the chessboard. Children ran around, pretending to be knights and pawns, while adults placed bets. Most bet on Marcus, but a few mostly older folks who'd known Lila longest put coins on her. There's something about that girl, Mrs. Carter said to Mr. Harrow at the tavern. She's not as simple as she seems. Mr. Harrow nodded, his brow furrowed. I keep thinking about her father, he said. He was different, quiet, like her, but sharp. Used to play chess at the old mill, back when I was young. Never lost a game. Mrs. Carter's eyes widened. You think Lila learned from him? Mr. Harrow shrugged. Maybe, but there's more to it. I just can't remember. Back at the match, Lila's knight on f3 sat like a challenge, daring Marcus to respond. He moved his pawn to d5, trying to take control of the center, but his hands were unsteady. The crowd sensed it. Marcus wasn't his usual cocky self. Lila's moves were too clean, too confident. She wasn't just playing, she was commanding the board. Lila's next move came quickly. She pushed her pawn to c3, reinforcing her center. The crowd murmured, impressed. Even those who didn't know chess could feel the shift. Marcus's friends exchanged worried glances. She's not supposed to know this stuff, Tom whispered. What's going on? Marcus glared at the board, his mind racing. He'd expected an easy win, a chance to show off. But Lila's moves were like puzzle pieces, each one fitting perfectly, building something he couldn't yet see. He moved his bishop to 5, hoping to pressure her, but his heart wasn't in it. Doubt crept in, cold and heavy. Who was Lila? Really? The crowd leaned closer, their whispers growing louder. She's good, a boy said, tugging his mother's sleeve. Really good. The mother shushed him, but her eyes stayed glued to the board. Old Miss Harrow, standing at the back, felt that nagging memory again. Lila's father, the mill, chess games under lantern light. And something else, a story he'd heard long ago, about a man who wasn't just a player but a master, someone who'd left Willowbrook under strange circumstances. Lila's hand moved again, this time to her bishop. She slid it to c4, attacking Marcus's pawn on d5. The move was sharp, aggressive, like a sword drawn in a duel. The crowd gasped, and Marcus's face went white. He stared at the board, then at Lila, his confidence crumbling. Her shy smile was gone now, replaced by a look of quiet determination. She wasn't just playing chess, she was playing him. Check, Lila said softly, her voice carrying across the square. The crowd exploded in shouts and gasps. Check? Already? Marcus's king was pinned, forced to move. He fumbled with his pieces, his hand shaking. The unbeatable champion was rattled, and everyone could see it. The referee, Mr. Jenkins, stepped forward, his voice shaking. Check! Confirmed! Marcus! Your move! The crowd pressed closer, their excitement electric. Lila leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving Marcus. He was sweating now, his fingers hovering over the board, unsure. The clock ticked, each second louder than the last. What would Marcus do? Could he fight back? Or was Lila's secret, whatever it was, too much for him? And what was that secret, buried in her past, that made her play like this? As Marcus reached for his king, a shout came from the crowd. Lila, Lila! The chant grew, spreading like fire. Marcus's hand froze. His eyes flicked to the crowd, then to Lila, who sat calm and still, like a storm waiting to break. And then, just as he moved his king to safety, Lila's hand reached for another piece, her fingers steady, her eyes blazing. What was she about to do? The town square was a pressure cooker, the air thick with anticipation. Lila's bishop sat on b5, pinning Marcus's knight to his king like a hunter's arrow. The crowd held its breath, their eyes darting between the board and Marcus's pale face. His hand hovered over the pieces, frozen, as if touching one might burn him. Lila sat still, her shy smile unchanged, but her eyes gleamed with a fire that made the crowd uneasy. This wasn't the baker they knew. This was someone dangerous. Marcus forced a laugh, but it cracked like dry wood. "Nice trick," he said, his voice too loud, too shaky. "But you're still out of your league." He moved his pawn to a6, trying to chase Lila's bishop away. It was a safe move, but not a strong one. The serious chess players in the crowd, the old men with weathered hands and sharp minds, frowned. They saw it for what it was, a retreat. Marcus was playing scared. Lila didn't hesitate. Her hand moved like it had a mind of its own, sliding her bishop to a4, keeping the pin on Marcus's knight. The crowd gasped, a ripple of shock spreading through them. It was a fearless move, one that tightened the trap around Marcus's pieces. His king was exposed, his options shrinking. The children in the front row whispered excitedly, sensing something big was happening, even if they didn't understand the board. Marcus's friends, Tom included, stood frozen near the stage, their smirks gone. She's good," Tom muttered, his voice barely audible. Marcus leaned forward, his elbows digging into the table, his eyes locked on the board. Sweat beaded on his forehead, glinting in the morning sun. He'd never been pushed like this, not in Willowbrook, not by anyone. The crowd could feel it. The game was slipping out of his control. Lila's moves weren't just good. They were calculated, precise, like she was reading his mind. Every piece she touched seemed to carry a secret, a weight that made the air heavier. Old Mr. Jenkins, the referee, cleared his throat. "Your move, Marcus," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. Marcus flinched, like he'd forgotten where he was. He reached for his queen, then stopped, his hand trembling. He moved his pawn to b6 instead, another defensive play, trying to break Lila's grip on the board. But his eyes betrayed him. They kept flicking to Lila, searching for a crack in her calm, a hint of weakness. He found none. Lila's next move was swifter pawn to a5, attacking Marcus's knight. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some cheering, others too stunned to speak. It was a daring push, one that forced Marcus to make a hard choice, lose his knight or weaken his position further. The old chess players nodded to each other, their eyes wide. "She's playing like a grandmaster," one whispered. "Where'd she learn this?" Marcus's face was a storm cloud now, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. He moved his knight to f6, trying to counterattack, but his hand shook as he set the piece down. The crowd could see Ethi was unraveling. Lila's calm, her steady hands, her unshakable focus was breaking him. And she hadn't said a word since the game began. That silence was louder than any taunt Marcus could have thrown. The day before the match, Willowbrook had been alive with gossip. The challenge between Lila and Marcus was all anyone could talk about. In the market, people swapped theories over baskets.